Welcome back to Patman Garage. So I've got a 2008 LR3 here at the house today that we're taking a look at. It's got a low coolant light that comes on occasionally, uh, typically seen at the beginning or the end of the drive cycle. And we're going to put a new coolant reservoir in this thing. It has a little cork float inside the reservoir that sinks over time once it ages. Basically, it's like an old fishing bobber, basically, but we're going to put a new coolant reservoir in it, so I'm going to show you that process real quick, and then I will see how she does after that. So we're going to open the hood. We got the hood popped already, and we'll hit the release there in the middle. So coolant reservoir, we have the power steering bottle that's attached to the side of it. That'll just slide off. And we've got a upper hose and a lower hose down there. Both those are going to be just standard hose clamps. And then we've got a 2 8mm down here on the feet. And I think, if I remember correctly, it just lifts out on the front side of the core support. So we should be able to get this thing out pretty quickly here, and we'll see how this process goes. Now, a long time ago, I worked at Land Rover, and I used to do these in my sleep because we used to do them all the time, but it's been probably about 12 years since I've done one of these, so like I said, it should be pretty easy here. We'll see if we can get this knocked out. All right, and here's my tools of choice here. I've got hose pinchers. I'm not going to have room to put one on the top, but honestly, we're not going to really lose much off the top because it's just air venting. So we may lose a little bit of dripping there, mostly concerned about trying to pinch off that bottom hose so we don't lose the vast majority of our coolant. So I'm going to pull this upper hose off. We'll probably just tuck it underneath the cover over here, and we'll get our coolant, or power steering reservoir off of here, and then we'll work on seeing if we can get down in there and get a pincher on the bottom one. All right, and I have featured these before. These are just hose pick tools that help you keep from tearing a hose, so you can make sure that the hose is not kind of glued in place. And we're just gonna, we did actually get a little bit of fluid out of that, but we're gonna just kind of wiggle that guy until it's loose. And like I said, we'll flip that guy off to the side here. All right. Compromise here, I just end up setting, I did slip the pincher on there right as I pulled it off just to make sure I didn't lose any more than I already did. And then the power steering reservoir comes off. There is technically supposed to be a little tab here, but looks like it maybe doesn't exist anymore, or maybe it got broken a long time ago, but we're just going to set that guy off to the side as well. And so we're going to work on getting pincher down here on that bottom hose, so we can try to keep what coolant we do have in here still in the bottle. And we'll get the new one out and take a look at it before we get too far along here. And the customer opted for a actual Land Rover version. There are significantly cheaper options out there, aftermarket ones. So do as you please, but that's our part number there. So I'm going to get this thing opened up and we'll take a look at the mounting points on it. All right, and my memory does serve me correctly. The front is just a slide slot setup, and we will have to get the level sensor unplugged here. So on this new one here, you can see through the side of the bottle, and you can see that little white guy in there. That's, like I said, is basically like a foam cork, and it floats up when it is full, and then it's supposed to sink down when the coolant level is low. Now, over time, that cork sensor becomes oversaturated, and it will just sink on its own all the time. So that's the main culprit there. And like I said, we'll get this thing swapped out. All right, so check this out. I've got my hose clamp slid back and got my pick already ran around that hose. So this is just about ready to come out. To get the reservoir out, you actually have to slide just kind of lean on the bracket, slide it out of the way to get the reservoir out from under it. And the washer fluid fill neck just kind of clips in place. That's super easy, just pops off towards you. Now my goal is, once I get this hose loose, I've got to have a bottle full of coolant that's going to be dumping. So I'm going to try to slide my finger over the top of the hole to plug it up temporarily. Then once I get it out of the truck, I'm going to set it on its side so that both my hose connections are facing up. So I'm going to try to do basically this here. I'm going to pull it out with my finger over the top of it, pull it out of the car, and set it down. Now, to be successful at not leaking coolant everywhere, I did go ahead and put my cap back on as well. So we're going to get this guy out and hopefully not lose too much more coolant. Get the new guy back in the hole and get that pipe on there, or the lower hose on there, and then we should be able to pour our coolant from the jug into the jug. Let's see how this works. All right, so I've got the old one setting off to the side. We got almost all of the coolant saved on that. We got a little bit dripped out, but not bad. Now, got my new jug just kind of sitting in the hole, and we need to get this line, the hose line back up to the filler neck or the bottleneck. So this is actually where I'm going to use my same hose pick, and I'm going to go down in here and grab inside my hose and use that as a second set of hands to line it up with my with my neck on the bottle there. Hopefully you can kind of see what I'm trying to do there. All right, and make life easier on yourself, use a really long extension, or maybe stack a couple extensions. That way you can use your ratchet up here in the open space like that, instead of trying to be down in a tighter hole than you need to be. So I got my 2/8 back on, got my bottle slid on the front, got my hose clamp done. Now I do my hose clamp before I do any of the bottle mounting. That way we have a little bit more flexibility there. We can pull our hose pinchers off here. See if I can do that one-handed with wet hands. There we go. And last but not least, we'll get our, and I did also plug in the coolant sensor on the bottom. And so last but not least, we'll put our top hose on and get this thing filled back up. Coolant reservoir, and we're gonna flip this guy over and pour it into the top of our new one. So not quite as perfect of a pour job as I could have been, because I started spilling out of that top vent a little bit. But I'm just going to show you with the coolant reservoir drained now. We can see the bobber in there, and it is completely bright red. So it has soaked up all the coloration out of the coolant and chemicals out of the coolant. So that's why that dude is no longer bobber floating anymore. Let's see if I can get this one here. There you go. You can still see it's moving, but it just sinks. All right, so we got the coolant reservoir reinstalled, and we're going to put a little bit of runtime on this thing just to make sure we have all the coolant system bled out before we send it back home. With it running, you can see the bleeder is blowing air bubbles back into the reservoir, and our coolant level should drop a little bit as we start to get all the air out of the system as well. I didn't say it earlier, but also make sure you get your power steering reservoir and your washer filler neck back on, hanging on the bottle. You should be good to go on this. All right, and we're cycling through our messages here. Obviously our door and our hood are open, but we are no longer getting that low coolant message, so that's good. And I appreciate you checking out another video of mine. And like I said, this is a pretty quick install overall. I think it took me 15-20 minutes tops, maybe 30 minutes if you've never done the job before, but just pretty basic hand tools. And yeah, hopefully showed you a couple tricks. You learned something new on this one. Like I said, I appreciate you, and I will catch you in the next one.